question number 1 is actually, the textbook, I think, did a poor job of this one. Yes. Yeah. In choosing their values. Because in my opinion, if I was going to evaluate this, because this question says write as a single trig ratio, then evaluate, but pi over 4 and pi over 6, they're on my pi plate. I could just figure out that that's root 2 over 2 and evaluate right away without having to do any extra work. But what this question wanted us to do is they wanted us to see cos squared minus sine squared and recognize that as a formula. And this is going to be a hard one to recognize because you will, based on your experience, you will see sine squared plus cos squared equals 1 first. This doesn't match up, though, because it's a minus. But in the formulas that we learned today, cos squared minus sine squared is one of the formulas for cos 2l. So what that means is we can think of this angle, pi over 4, that's the alpha, and this is going to equal cos of 2 times alpha, which was pi over 4. Which, when we simplify this, becomes cos of pi over 2. And pi over 2 is on your pi plate. Cos of pi over 2 is equal to 0. Of course, why I thought this was a bad example for the textbook to use is it's pretty obvious that cos of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. And sine of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. And if you squared them both, you're going to get 2 over 4 and 2 over 4. And if you subtract them, you're going to get 0. So I didn't need to do this work to see that it was equal to 0. I could have used, I could have given you this same question 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you still would have got it right. Same thing with part B. However, part B, then choosing pi over 6, you have that on your pi plate. You could evaluate this right away and simplify it. Okay? But what they want us to do is see that this is close to the formula. If we look at the formula for tan, we turn to our formula sheet, we've got tan 2 alpha equals 2 tan alpha over 1 minus tan squared alpha. Does this match up? No. It's close. It has the 2 tan alpha on the top, but instead of 1 minus tan squared, it has tan squared minus 1. But what we can do with that, and a special note, whenever things are really close like that, but just opposite, you can always factor out a negative. So this actually does tap into some really important math stuff that sometimes a little bit tricky. What I'm going to do is on the bottom, I'm going to factor out a negative. That will make the negative 1 positive and make the tan squared part negative. That comes up a fair bit in math as a strategy to help you simplify something. Another thing that comes up a fair bit in math is negative numbers. And when negatives are in fractions, I hope you realize that if I have a fraction like this, 1 over negative 3, that negative could have been on the bottom. You could also move that negative to the top, or you could move that negative just in front. All three of those mean the same thing. When you want to have negative 1/3, you can choose where that negative is. Currently, in our expression right now, we have a negative on the bottom. And currently, this expression doesn't match the formula perfectly, right? Here's the formula perfectly. There's no negative in that formula. However, if I think about negatives and say, well, what if I just have that negative out in front? Like, I don't even need brackets, but let's say I put brackets there. Then I would have 2 tan pi over 6 over 1 minus tan squared pi over 6. And now what's inside the brackets matches that formula perfectly so I could substitute. My alpha's pi over 6, so I could say it's just 2 times tan of pi over 6. And this just becomes negative tan of pi over 3. Pi over 3 is on our pi plate, which is root 3, and you would get negative root 3. Of course, again, on this one, instead of doing all this manipulation, we could have just added the numbers in right away. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a part C and a part D that are better questions. Okay? So here's my part C. It's going to say evaluate. It'll be a non-calculator question, and you have 1 minus 2 sine squared of pi over 8. So why this is a better question is you have no idea. You've never done a question with a pi over 8 in it. It's definitely not on your unit circle. You don't have a calculator. The only thing you could hope to do is manipulate this somehow. And we recognize the 1 minus 2 sine squared alpha as one of the formulas for cos. So this will equal cos of 2 times alpha, which for alpha is pi over 8, 2 times pi over 8. Remember that 2 is really 2 over 1, so when you're multiplying fractions, that would become cos of pi over 4, and that's on your unit circle. And you would get root 2 over 2. Okay. Hey, remember yesterday we did pi over 12 questions, where you had to use a pi over 4 and use the alpha plus beta formulas. Okay? A pi over 12 question on your test or on the final exam is usually out of 3 or 4 marks, because there's a lot of things to do. But if you remember this, like the steps, it's one of the easier questions that can be done. Okay? But I saw in a final exam this question, called D, evaluate, and it had 2 pi over 12s in it. 2 sine of pi over 12 and cos of pi over 12. And if a pi over 12 question is 3 marks, and this is a pi over 12, and this is another pi over 12, and you're going to have to multiply them together, this question seems like it should be worth 6 or 7 marks. But on the final exam, it was only 2 marks. And the reason for that, and the reason that I'm going to say you have to have your formulas memorized mostly, is because the students who saw this as pi over 12 questions did a ton of work. And most of them made a mental math error somewhere along the way when they tried to put everything together to get their answer. But it's only 2 marks. So that 2 marks, sometimes on an exam, how much the question is out of is a hint. Right? I'd be a great psychology experiment. I should do it to grade 9 if you guys wouldn't mind. I should do it to grade 9s where I have a really easy question, and beside it I put 6 marks. And then a really hard question, and like, just 1 mark. Answer only, please. With that, because have you ever got to, like, sometimes I have students come up and go, this question says it's 3 marks, but I don't feel like I've done enough work. Have you ever had those questions where it's like more marks, and I should do a whole test where it's completely opposite all the marks? don't make sense whatsoever. See what kind of psychological trauma that creates. That'd be good. But for this one, it's only 2 marks because there's a formula that has 2 sine alpha cos alpha. That formula is sine 2 times alpha. And if you do this, there's your first mark. Simplifying it to pi over 6, and then evaluating sine of pi over 6 to be 1/2 is your second mark. And that's why this question is only worth 2 marks, because it is easy to do that way. Okay, I would like you to circle questions